But one thing you can observe based on imagery you can get publicly is that West African car parks in Benin didn't exist in 2002, in the beginning of 2003 for the most part. There were car parks, but the parks which are figured in the DEA cases weren't there. Today, you probably see them from space. They're so large. There's so many thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially, cars going through here. I can't count cars from little bitty images, but it's incredible. In 2002, this is the car park, which is the Alyssa car park, was basically barren. 2007, it starts to fill up. And, you know, I don't know, it looks to me like there's like 30,000. I was trying to figure out the number of cars that could be parked there, but we'll leave it to the experts. But it's a vast amount of cars. And, of course, they're constantly moving through there, according to the published reports. And there have been some interesting doctoral dissertations written about the used car trade in West Africa without really understanding why it exists. And the key thing as a money laundering expert is that this doesn't make economic sense. Used cars make sense. But the reports that have come in from the investigations and come out publicly, so they're paying more money in these car auctions in the U.S. than the cars are actually worth. And they're still shipping them. This is not a high-margin business at the very least. For it to be involved in generating billions of dollars, which is making its way over a 5-year period into Lebanese banks, it doesn't stack up logically. It's way too profitable a business to be this profitable, okay? I mean, way too unprofitable business to be this profitable. Today, as of November at least, the car parks are even larger. And hopefully the impact, and I can't vouch for this, of the December Southern District of New York action against the actual used car dealers in the United States will have a strategic impact. And you can see that the car parks just get bigger. Well, what gets bigger at the exact same time? And this is a true financial miracle as a financial history guy. The Lebanese banking system. Lebanon gets bombed. And it suffered terrible damage and tragic damage, frankly, in August of 2006, in what I think was an unforeseen war for both Hezbollah and for the Israelis. But what one would not expect to see in a country which has as much debt to GDP as Lebanon, which is, I think, has the highest debt to GDP of any country in the Middle East, would be a financial boom in the wake of Reconstruction. Reconstruction is an extraordinarily costly endeavor. I mean, you know, one can applaud the Lebanese for reconstructing their economy, but what one can't applaud is the massive surge in deposits of non-residents and of members of the Lebanese community in the Lebanese banking system. The Lebanese banking system essentially doubled or tripled, depending on how one wants to configure it, between 2006 and 2011. You know, the data is what it is. It was a huge surge in financial growth, almost without precedent in the Middle East, although Lebanon's banking system has been growing at a steady clip for a long time. And that's been a good thing for Lebanon. But what's coincidental, and what's actually more than coincidental, is the rise of those car parks and the movement of billions. And when I say billions of dollars, in the Southern District action, it details over $1.2 billion declared at the Togo-Ghana border, which made its way apparently into Lebanese banks just in 2007 alone. One has to ask yourself, where does one get $1 billion in bulk cash? Well, the place where you get $1 billion in bulk cash most easily these days is in places like Panama, which are also dollarized, where you're seeing the largest drug trafficking cartels in the world operating. In a recent case against a guy named Giorgio Shaitelli, a Hezbollah money launderer there, can illuminate a little bit of the relationship between Panama and Lebanon. Ayman Juma, of course, you wouldn't necessarily know, but for those of us who studied this case, was based in Panama and Lebanon. These things aren't coincidences. That's where you're generating billions of dollars in bulk cash. This is just an academic study of the foreign currency deposited by residents in the Lebanese banking system, which is about 70% dollarized. It's just remarkable, almost ridiculous amounts of growth. The foreign exchange reserves and gold reserves of the Lebanese central bank tell a similar story. See how it's flat from 2004 to 2006. War comes and it skyrockets. One man's miracle is another man's conspiracy. The fastest growing bank in Lebanon over the last decade was the Lebanese Canadian Bank, which not incidentally was the bank that was most centrally involved in the finances of Hezbollah as an organization, according to the Southern District documents and the Department of Treasury's designation of the bank. It just had ridiculous growth rates. It had bought the Hulk of Bank Al Medina, a rather infamous bank that failed in 2003. Again, a year that will go down in sort of infamy financially related to this network. And then in 2007, it just continued to just skyrocket in growth. The Southern District of New York document details the official accounts of Hezbollah entities that were in the Lebanese Canadian Bank, at least some of them. This was a bank that, from all appearances, was involved in command control financially, not only of a vast narco money laundering network, one of the largest in the world, but also the Hezbollah leadership finances and the finances, including of the User Company for finance investments, sort of the Goldman Sachs or of Hezbollah for making loans to businesses. And Hezbollah, it's very important to understand, it's become a big business. You can see it in Lebanon. They've encroached on every aspect of the economy. And by all accounts, they're relatively shrewd businessmen, but they also seem to have embraced illicit finance as a main source of revenue. Those illicit financial networks connect back into Hezbollah's unofficial treasury and treasurer, Hussein al-Shami, according to the Southern District document. And the key thing is the Lebanese Canadian Bank, which apparently even had a senior Hezbollah finance operative inside the bank, was not only aware of what was going on, they were deeply complicit. And that's the basis for the Treasury Department taking the Section 311 action against the Lebanese Canadian Bank as a primary money laundering concern. That is a very high hurdle to reach. You just can't do that against anyone. Basically, that bank existed more than any other reason to launder money. It's also important, and I should point out one last thing in this regard, that the Treasury's Section 311 complaint on money laundering involving the Lebanese Canadian Bank, which cut it off from the U.S. and collapsed the bank, I should point out, it was a $5.5 billion bank in terms of deposits as of February 2011, and today it doesn't exist except within the Societe Generale Bank of Lebanon, another bank which frankly has some suspicious ties according to things you can find that have come public recently. But another piece of this that was vaguely described in the 311 complaint was Iran's official access to LCB and key managers who provided them with banking services. I think that obviously also is a very important piece of this puzzle, especially as we start to look at other banks in Lebanon